footy is back. Players are already back into training and preparing for the upcoming season. Some of the players I will be discussing today are ones that should be working harder than everyone else, proving the doubters wrong. Guys on their last life and are hoping for a second chance to save their careers. I'll start with Dan Hannebery. Once considered a top 10 player in the game, Dan had all the skill and determination to pave out a very successful career for the Sydney Swans. However, the past 2 years have weighed upon Hannebery, who has looked a shell of himself. Dan has struggled with form and getting his body right over the past few seasons. There have been questions over his appetite to the game. Is he hungry enough to put in the work to be elite? These were the questions Sydney fans would often ask themselves. At the end of last season, Dan was offered a favourable contract to return to his home state and play for St Kilda Football Club. He took the contract and moved down south to start training with his new team. So far, he looks lean, he has clearly dropped a few kilos and seems to be refreshed by the move. Next up is Tom Liberatore. Tom has had his fair share of critics since arriving to the club as a fresh-faced youngster for the Bulldogs. There was a lot of pressure on him to perform straight away, being the son of a club great Tony Liberatore. Tom handled this pressure with ease. In his debut season, he finished the season being one of the leaders in total tackles made. His footy continued to improve season by season, and he became the best clearance player in the league by age of 22. However, it was his apparent off-field behaviour and personal life which got him in hot water. At every chance, the sports media tried to make him look like some out-of-control party boy who didn't care about team success. Libba again handled this with ease by not talking to the media. Instead, he let his football do the talking and became a top 15 player in the competition. Libba ended up winning the 2016 Premiership with his Bulldogs teammates, something that he worked endlessly to get to. After the season, you could spot Tom on every newspaper in Victoria. The photographers would capture him rocking a unique haircut during an off-season trip to Bali. He had played a game of footy overseas for a local team. News outlets were going nuts over this, trying to depict a wild child type of image. Since the grand final, Tom has struggled with both his ACLs. He will be hoping to put together a consistent season, injury-free, or he could find himself delisted and moving on to the next phase of his life. Shane Mumford. Mummy is coming out of retirement and is hoping to resurrect his career on the same team he finished up with. The Giants' big man has a heap to prove. Since returning to the game, he has copped a bashing in the media over a video that surfaced of him snorting a white substance, believed to be cocaine. It's time to put the off-field issues aside and start to dominate every ruck contest going forward in 2019. If he can stay fit and push his way into the number 1 ruck spot, it should help the GWS midfielders crack their way into the finals and have a real chance of winning their first premiership. Imagine Mummy up on that stage putting the premiership medallion around his neck. Paddy McCartin. This man arguably has the most to prove out of all the guys I'm talking about in this video. Selected number 1 in the 2014 draft, he was taken ahead of the likes of Christian Petrarca, Angus Brayshaw, Jordan De Goey, Lockie Weller and Caleb Daniel. A lot of his progress has been hampered by injury and concussion protocol. My prediction this season is that Paddy will get back on the park and play. He might even be a solid player. I do not think he will be a difference maker though. I never rated him coming out of the draft. I would have chosen a more modern player like Christian Petrarca. Another number 1 pick the year before was Carlton's Jacob Weitering. He was a highly touted junior player who showed enough skill and ability coming into the draft, but what some scouts didn't pay attention to was his hunger for the game. He has shown me a couple of glimpses here and there, but hasn't convinced me that he's worthy of that number 1 pick status. If he can hold down his own in defence this season, it just won't be enough to justify his place in the draft. If I were Brendan Bolton, I would try playing him up forward this season. What have Carlton really got to lose? They have spent the last 15 seasons losing. It's time to swing for the fences and try some new things. Imagine Weitering pulling off a Liam Jones type readjustment. Would be an absolute joy for the Blues diehard fans. Tom Boyd. The penny has to drop this season. No more excuses. He may have been a catalyst in the Dogs capturing the 2016 Premiership flag, but that game was a quick flash in the pan. The 2013 number 1 pick has been in and out of form throughout his speculated career. Mental health issues and contract pressure have weighed heavily on his shoulders. While having played some solid enough footy in the VFL, it really isn't good enough for someone who was touted as the next Nick Riewoldt. If he is to continue to play in the AFL, he needs to turn things around quick, or risk being remembered as an AFL bust with the worst contract in AFL history. Cam McCarthy. Once considered GWS's best young player, Cam McCarthy was on an upward trajectory to stardom. That was until he requested a trade home to WA in 2016. In this time, he has looked out of place as a main forward target. His on-field presence was a major letdown for the former top 15 pick. At times, he looked lost and confused. In his defence though, he was a third string forward to the Giants behind Jono Patton and Jeremy Cameron, which meant he could roam around without a key defender on him and collect all the touches on the ground, as well as the occasional uncontested mark. I thought Freo did extremely well in the off-season, acquiring Rory Lobb and Jesse Hogan. Unfortunately, Hogan will miss much of the season with ongoing personal reasons, but Lobb will play as the number 1 forward at Freo, which will free up McCarthy to play more on ball and up the ground. If he cannot improve this season, then I see him becoming a waffle player at best. My prediction is that he'll bounce back to relevance and resurrect his career. Father-son key forward prospect Darcy Moore is a towering 203cm and 102 kilo mobile tall. He hasn't been terrible to date, but he hasn't flourished like we thought he was going to back in 2015 in his rookie season. Due to Mason Cox's unprecedented success as a forward and Brodie Grundy's emergence, we see Darcy switch to playing last season in defence. He was steady and looked okay, but with the acquisition of Roughhead to play back, I really think he needs to compete harder than ever before to prove he's going to take that number 1 key back post with both hands. It will be interesting to see the relationship between the two, but I think Darcy Moore will earn his way back into the best 22 for Collingwood and keep Roughhead to the outside looking in. Ryan Bastanak. I have solid hopes for this man. I actually went to school with the guy and heard lots of talk around him and his star potential as a footballer. Ryan started his career for North Melbourne back in 2011. Taken with pick 21 in that year's draft, Brad Scott was a big fan of the young midfielder, giving him plenty of games to start his career. Sadly, he got injured and didn't get back to the form he had once shown. After a disappointing 2015, the Kangaroos were involved in a 3-team trade, sending Ryan Bastanak to the Brisbane Lions. Since becoming a Lion, he has played 41 games across 3 seasons, but has never fully broken into the team's best 22 week in and week out. I believe this to be the last year to prove himself. He's 27 years old and going into the prime of his career. Time to crack into the best 22 and provide those good leadership qualities he is blessed with. Matthew Cruiser. Once considered the key piece to Carlton's rebuild hope back in 2007, Cruiser was the first pick in the 2007 National Draft. Standing at 200 centimetres and 98 kilos, versatility between the ruck and the forward line was important as it helped give Brendan Favola a rest when needed. Cruiser has shown plenty of potential throughout his injury-riddled career, but at this stage at age 29, suffering more interruptions this pre-season hasn't made for smooth momentum. I hope he can get back soon and be injury-free, but I just can't see it. In my opinion, I think he could be traded to a contender at season's end. I could see him playing for the Hawks or Geelong in season 2020. James Aish. The 2013 draft was a dream for many of the bottom teams. Many this believed to be a super draft, the best draft since 2001. It featured names such as Tom Boyd, Josh Kelly, Jack Billings, and Marcus Bontempelli at the top of the draft board. One name selected in the top 10 was none other than James Aish. The highly touted junior was selected by the Brisbane Lions with pick 7. Drafted as a gun midfielder, many wondered why he slipped so low. The The Brisbane Lions were happy enough and he went on and played 32 games with the club. He looked ready to break out and emerge as one of their premier midfielders. He finished among some of the top rookies in his draft class. However, this was the pinnacle for the young mid. After his stagnant second season, he requested a trade out of Queensland, and it was the Collingwood Pies who swooped in and took the young man as part of the Dame Beams trade back in 2015. Since arriving to Collingwood, he found himself on the outer. He would play some solid footy in the VFL side as a smaller halfback and would come in out of the AFL team from time to time. Last season was his breakout season at Collingwood. He played 13 games in the back line. He was solid. If he can carry this momentum into 2019, then he can resurrect his once promising career and maybe win a premiership with the Pies.